Thanks, Carl. I've literally been given 2 or 3 minutes to talk about the essential role of the church in cultivating a society of life. So I'm going to speak about the essential role of the church in cultivating a society of life. If I say it again, my 2 minutes will be up, but what I want to speak clearly about is understanding the role that each of you have. You might think that I'm just talking to pastors, ministers and vicars. Yes and no. Those of you who are in that role of being a church leader, you know how busy life can be, and you know that there's so many other things on your plate that unless you have the support and encouragement of everyone else in your church to bring you and remind you of this task, it will probably be something that slips by the wayside. So this is a role for every one of us who are involved in churches, leaders, congregants, members, parishioners, all of us. Understanding the essential role of the church in cultivating the society of life. A wise man said many years ago, when reflecting upon his entire life and the purpose or otherwise of it, said all is meaningless. Looked at his achievements, the richest man known to have existed to that date, and said there's really nothing that I would look before and say is wonderful. Solomon, who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, often speaks with pained heart about what it was his life was about. Yet in the very middle of it, he says, where there's life, there's hope. Ecclesiastes 9:4 states clearly the understanding and the intersection of life and hope, and where these two things come together, where there is hope, there is also life. Another man also reflected on the purpose of the church, and he said the local church is the hope of the world. Some of you will have heard that. Bill Hybels wanting to understand how can we summarize what it is that we're about as churches. We've got lots of different ways we can summarize it, but he's found that as a working model. The local church is the hope of the world. We understand through scripture where there is hope, there is life. So you could say the local church is the life of the world. And the reality, the important reason we need to understand our essential role as churches is that if we don't do it, no one else does it. The word cultivating means to make good of the land, or to make the land good to grow. It involves bringing things together in furrows, in ways in which the best things would grow out of it. Cultivating is not easy. Cultivating is difficult, but it must be done. We are all here today, and we are all alive because at some stage, prior to today, and including today, we have eaten regularly. In order for us to do that, somebody has had to cultivate something somewhere, some land, in order that we can eat. The essential role of farmers in cultivating is so that we may have life. If they don't do it, and no one does it, nobody does the cultivating, there will be death. If we don't do it as churches, no one else is going to do it. There are very well-meaning groups and organisations across our city, across our nation, across our world, but it is essential that we do that because we are the only ones that can do it. So I speak to pastors, I speak to members, parishioners, all of those who are involved in churches. Please gently remind your church leaders that this is something that will not go away. This is something that each of us need to speak about on a regular basis. Please, pastors, could I encourage you, if you don't think this is important enough to give airtime for the pro-lifers in your congregation, please speak to them. Just a cameo in driving home today, or driving down today. We passed the car of a friend who is at a church where this is not spoken about. She is very pro-life herself and had not heard on the build-up to this that there was such a thing happening today. This must be turned around, because the essential role of the church in cultivating the society of life is not something that can be delegated to anybody else. It is our role, it is essential, and remember, where there is life, there is hope. Thank you.